Imagine falling in love with someone who isn't who they say they are. A man who hides his true identity. Not out of malice, but out of fear that no one could ever love him for who he really is. In a small town in Mississippi, a single mother struggling to raise her little boy meets a stranger who seems ordinary, humble, kind. But behind his simple clothes and quiet smile, he carries a secret that could change everything. When the truth finally comes out, hearts will be tested, faith will be shaken, and love will face its greatest trial. This is the story of Rachel, David, and a truth that refused to stay hidden. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. There are some stories that stay with you forever. Stories that remind us what true love looks like. Not the kind you see on TV, not the kind that fades when money runs out, but the kind that comes from the heart. This is one of those stories, and it all began in a quiet town in Mississippi, where wealth and faith met in the life of a young man named David Miller. David wasn't just any man. He was the only son of Mr. Robert Miller, one of the richest men in the state. The Miller family had built their wealth over 3 generations. Land, businesses, and investments that made them respected far and wide. People looked at their mansion on the hill and whispered, "That's where the Millers live." To many, the family seemed untouchable. But Robert Miller, despite all his wealth, was a humble man. He raised his children with discipline, faith, and love. He taught them that money might buy comfort, but it would never buy peace of heart. David grew up under those lessons. He was tall, handsome, and carried himself with quiet confidence. His skin glowed in the southern sun. His curly dark hair gave him a charm, and his smile could light up a room. In Mississippi, women whispered about him everywhere he went. "That's David Miller," they would say. "He's single, and he's the heir to everything his father owns." Some looked at him with admiration, others with envy, and many with hope. But here's the truth that no one could see just by looking. David's heart was heavy. He had been searching for something real, something lasting. To the world, he was the perfect bachelor. But to him, he was just a man tired of being loved for the wrong reasons. He had dated women before, but each time he found the same thing. When he tested their hearts, there was no depth. They wanted the money, the lifestyle, the Miller name, but not him, not the man behind it all. One evening, Robert Miller sat with his son in their wide, oak-paneled living room. The fireplace crackled gently, the Mississippi night stretching beyond the tall windows. Robert's voice was calm but full of weight. "David, my boy," he said, "I am proud of you. You've handled yourself well in business and in faith. But remember what you promised me. Once your overseas project was finished, you would think seriously about marriage." David chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Dad, you know I've tried. But I don't get lucky with women. They see me and think of the Miller fortune. They don't see my heart. I once dated a woman who laughed when I mentioned God. She told me marriage was just a trap. Can you imagine that?" Robert leaned forward, his eyes kind but firm. "Don't give up, son. The Bible says, 'He who finds a wife finds a good thing, and obtains favor from the Lord.' The right one will come. You just have to be patient and wise." David nodded, though a shadow of doubt lingered inside him. Weeks later, David returned home from his work abroad, and the Millers decided to attend Sunday service together, as they always did. Their family believed in giving thanks openly, and Robert especially liked to bring his children to church after every milestone. That Sunday morning, the family entered Grace Baptist Church, one of the largest churches in the county. Heads turned instantly. The Miller daughters were dressed in grace and elegance, and David, walking beside his father, carried himself with that quiet humility that made people admire him even more. Whispers spread through the pews. "That's him. That's David Miller. They say he's back from overseas. And still single." Women exchanged looks, adjusting their dresses, hoping to catch his eye. But one person in particular noticed him immediately. Her name was Sophia Green. Sophia was the lead singer in the church choir, known for her angelic voice. When she sang, people felt chills down their spine. She had beauty, style, and confidence. Everyone admired her, but not everyone liked her. Behind her polished smile was a heart filled with pride. Sophia often judged others by their appearance, what they wore, what they drove, and who they knew. To her, social status was everything. That Sunday, the moment she saw David, her mind began to race. As the choir sang, Sophia's eyes flickered to him again and again. She raised her voice higher, swaying gracefully, as if the entire service revolved around her performance. Her heart whispered, "That's the man. He's single, rich, and from the most influential family in Mississippi. Who else deserves him more than me?" She smiled to herself, convinced destiny was on her side. Later in the service, David stood to give his testimony about his safe return and the success of his project abroad. His words were sincere, filled with gratitude to God. When he gave his offering, it was generous, as always, because giving was in his nature. Sophia's eyes widened. She leaned toward her friend in the choir and whispered, "Did you see that? The Millers are overflowing with money. I will have him. No one else in this church can compare to me." That evening, back at the Miller home, Robert teased his son over dinner. "So, David, did you notice the way those ladies stared at you in church today?" David laughed, shaking his head. "Come on, Dad, we were in church. I couldn't focus on that." "Well, I noticed if you didn't," Robert chuckled, and both of them laughed together. The days passed, and soon the church announced its upcoming Thanksgiving service. Robert was a man who never missed such gatherings, so once again, the family prepared to attend. That morning, something happened that changed David's life. As he rode with his father to church, his eyes caught a scene on the roadside. A woman was crossing with a little boy, no more than 6 years old, holding her hand. Just ahead, an old man struggled with a heavy bag, barely able to carry it. Without hesitation, the woman handed the boy the bag she was carrying, rushed over, and helped the elderly man across the road. David's heart softened instantly. He watched the simple act of kindness with a smile. "It's good to see people still care," he murmured. His father nodded. "I think I've seen her before. She looks familiar. Perhaps she's part of our church." And she was. Her name was Rachel Morgan. Rachel was an usher at Grace Baptist. Life had not been easy for her. She was a single mother, raising her son Ethan on her own. Back in high school, she had fallen in love with a boy who promised her forever. But when she became pregnant, he abandoned her, leaving her heartbroken. Years later, she heard he had married someone else in another state. Since then, Rachel had carried the burden alone, working at a furniture store to care for Ethan and her sick father. She had little, but she never complained. She was hardworking, humble, and devoted to her faith. People respected her because she treated everyone equally, no matter who they were. She didn't look down on anyone, and her kindness was as steady as the Mississippi River itself. That day at church, Sophia once again tried to draw David's attention. She sang louder, dressed brighter, and walked past him with a confident sway. But David's focus wasn't on her. His thoughts kept returning to the woman he had seen on the road, the one with the boy and the act of kindness. After the service, something remarkable happened. As David walked toward his car, a small boy ran up to him with tears in his eyes. "Sir, my ball fell in the gutter. Can you help me get it, please?" David looked down at the boy, saw his sadness, and without hesitation, rolled up his sleeves, retrieved the ball, and handed it back. The boy's face lit up instantly. "Thank you, sir. Now I can keep practicing. I want to be like Ronaldo when I grow up." Before David could reply, a woman came rushing forward, slightly out of breath. "Ethan, where have you been? I've been looking for you." It was Rachel. She recognized David, and when she saw him holding Ethan's ball, she quickly thanked him. "I appreciate your kindness, sir. He can be quite the handful." David smiled warmly. "It's no trouble at all. He reminds me of myself at that age." And just like that, they began to talk. Rachel spoke about her faith, her service in church, and what it meant to raise her son with love and discipline. David listened carefully, touched by her sincerity. For the first time in years he felt something stir in his heart, something real. When he returned home later that day, David couldn't wait to tell his father about what had happened. He told him about Ethan, about Rachel, and even mentioned Sophia, though he quickly added that appearances didn't sway him anymore. His father listened carefully, then placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Son, sometimes God places people in our path not by accident, but on purpose. Pay attention. You may be closer to your answer than you think." David nodded, but deep inside, he knew his search for true love had just begun. Life in Mississippi had its rhythm, a blend of gospel hymns on Sunday mornings, the hum of cicadas at dusk, and neighbors who always seemed to know everyone's business. For David Miller, though, the days after that chance meeting with Rachel and her son Ethan felt different. Something had shifted. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he had met someone who wasn't blinded by his name or his father's wealth. But while his heart stirred quietly, somewhere else another heart burned with ambition. Sophia Green, the choir singer with a voice that filled the sanctuary, couldn't stop thinking about David. In her mind, she had already drawn the future. She would be Mrs. Miller, living in the mansion on the hill, dressed in designer clothes, admired by the whole town. She believed she deserved it. After all, she was beautiful, talented, and known in the church. Why shouldn't she be the one? But there was one obstacle Sophia didn't expect: Rachel. She noticed the way David's eyes lingered on Rachel after the Thanksgiving service, the way he bent down to help Ethan. Sophia had spent years perfecting her charm, her looks, her voice, yet here was a single mother with a second-hand dress and worn shoes, stealing the attention she had been working toward. It made her furious. Her. Sophia whispered to herself as she stood in front of the mirror one evening, brushing her long hair. What does she have that I don't? A child out of wedlock. A plain face. That's nothing compared to me. She smiled bitterly. David will be mine. I'll make sure of it. Meanwhile, Rachel carried on with her life as if she hadn't been noticed at all. For her, survival was the focus. She woke up early every morning, packed Ethan's lunch, and dropped him off at school before heading to work at the furniture store. The pay wasn't much, but it kept food on the table and the lights on. On weekends, she served faithfully as an usher in church, greeting people with her warm smile, guiding them to their seats. Her life was simple, but her heart was strong. Ethan was her joy. He was bright, curious, and full of dreams. Every night before bed, he told his mother the same thing. "Mama, one day I'll buy you a big house, so you won't have to work so hard anymore." And every night Rachel kissed his forehead and whispered, "All I need is you, Ethan. You're my greatest blessing." But deep inside Rachel carried pain. She often wondered why love had betrayed her so early in life. Why did the man who promised forever leave her when she needed him most? Sometimes, when Ethan was asleep, she sat by the window and stared at the stars, whispering prayers through her tears. "Lord, give me strength. Let Ethan grow up with a good heart. Don't let him feel the weight of my mistakes." She never imagined that someone like David Miller had noticed her kindness. For David, the thought of Rachel and Ethan kept returning, even in the middle of his busy schedule. He remembered the way Rachel had rushed after Ethan, not with embarrassment, but with love. He remembered how her words were free of pride, how she carried herself with quiet dignity despite her struggles. It was refreshing, like stepping out into cool air after being in a crowded room. One afternoon, David spoke to his cousin Daniel, who was like a brother to him. They sat on the porch of the Miller home, rocking gently in wooden chairs as the sun set in streaks of orange and pink. "You've been quiet lately," Daniel teased. "I know that look. You've found someone, haven't you?" David chuckled. "I don't know if I'd call it that. But yes, I met a woman. Is different. Not like the others." "Different how?" Daniel leaned in. "She's humble. Real. She has a son, Ethan. I helped him with something the other day, and when I talked to her, I don't know, Daniel, felt honest. Like she wasn't trying to impress me. Like she didn't even care who I was." Daniel raised an eyebrow. And you like that? David nodded slowly. I do. I've had enough of people who look at me and see only money. Rachel looked at me and saw me. Daniel smiled knowingly. Sounds like you might be in trouble, cousin. But a good kind of trouble. Still, David wasn't the only one noticing Rachel. Sophia had made it her mission to secure David's heart. After choir rehearsal one evening, she approached him boldly. David, she said with her most charming smile, you know, I've been praying for someone like you. A man of faith, strong, hardworking, and devoted to God. I feel like we'd make such a great team. David, polite as ever, nodded but didn't encourage her further. Thank you, Sophia. That's kind of you to say. But Sophia wasn't done. She kept trying, sending him messages, baking pies she happened to deliver to the Miller home, always dressing her best when she knew he would be in church. Yet, no matter what she did, David's heart didn't move. Because by now, his thoughts were already leaning toward Rachel. The turning point came one Sunday after service. As the congregation filed out, David saw Rachel and Ethan standing near the steps. Ethan was tugging at his mother's hand, begging for a few dollars to buy ice cream from a man with a cart outside. Rachel hesitated, reaching into her purse, but David could see the hesitation. He recognized the look of someone counting carefully, making sure there would be enough left for the week. Without thinking, David approached them. Ethan, what's your favorite flavor? He asked warmly. Ethan's eyes lit up. Chocolate. Well then, David said with a grin. Let's get you 2 scoops. My treat. Rachel started to protest. Oh no, Mr. Miller, that's not necessary. But David shook his head. Please call me David. And it's just ice cream. I insist. Ethan cheered, and Rachel gave in, though a little embarrassed. As they walked to the cart together, David saw the gratitude in her eyes. Not the gratitude of someone impressed by money, but of a woman touched by kindness. When Ethan ran off happily licking his ice cream, Rachel turned to David. Thank you. It's been a while since I've seen him that happy over something so simple. David smiled softly. Happiness doesn't always come from big things, Rachel. Sometimes it's just 2 scoops of chocolate on a hot day. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the world grew quiet around them. But not everyone was happy about it. From a distance, Sophia stood watching, her lips pressed tight. Jealousy burned in her chest. She had been trying for weeks, and here was Rachel. Plain, struggling Rachel, sharing moments with a man Sophia believed should be hers. Later that night, Sophia sat in her room, furious. She thinks she can take what's mine. I'll show her. I'll show them both. She didn't know it yet, but her jealousy would only push David closer to Rachel, because the more Sophia tried to force herself into his life, the more obvious the difference became. Rachel was genuine. Sophia was pretending. And David was starting to see it more clearly every day. When David Miller lay in bed at night, he often thought about one thing. How could he know without a doubt who truly loved him for who he was? Money was both a blessing and a curse. It gave him opportunities and comfort, but it also clouded the eyes of people around him. He could never be sure. Did they like David the man or David the heir to the Miller fortune? Rachel Morgan had caught his heart off guard. Her kindness seemed natural, her humility real. Yet David's past experiences made him cautious. He had seen too many women hide their true intentions behind sweet words. And Sophia? Well, Sophia was determined. Too determined. Every smile of hers seemed rehearsed, every gesture calculated. David shared his worry with his cousin Daniel one evening while they worked together on one of the Miller family's farmland projects. They were sitting on the back of Daniel's old pickup truck, sipping cold sweet tea, the Mississippi fields stretching endlessly around them. You really like this Rachel woman, don't you? Daniel asked with a grin. David sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I do. More than I expected. But how do I know it's real? How do I know she won't change once she finds out how much I have? Daniel leaned back, thoughtful. You can't know just by watching. Sometimes you've got to test people. Not in a cruel way, but in a way that reveals their heart. David looked at him curiously. What are you saying? I'm saying you should let her see you without the money. Without the name. Just a man. If she treats you the same, then you'll have your answer. David chuckled at first, but the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. He remembered stories his father told him about how the richest truths often came when everything else was stripped away. Maybe this was his chance. The following Sunday, David put his plan into action. Instead of driving the sleek black car his family was known for, he borrowed Daniel's old, dented pickup truck. He wore a plain shirt and jeans, scuffed boots, and a worn-out cap. He even left his expensive watch at home. He wanted no trace of the Miller air on him, just a man who looked like he was struggling to make ends meet. When he walked into Grace Baptist Church that morning, most people barely noticed him. A few glanced his way, assuming he was new. He sat quietly in the back pew listening. Sophia noticed instantly. She was scanning the congregation as usual, her eyes searching for David. But when she saw him walk in dressed like that, her expression shifted. She squinted, frowned, and then whispered to the woman beside her. "Who is that? He looks out of place. Probably some farmhand wandering in." She turned away without another thought. Rachel, on the other hand, noticed too, but differently. She didn't see shabby clothes or a beat-up truck. She saw a man who had chosen to come to God's house, and that was enough for her. After service, as she ushered people out, she made sure to greet him. "Good morning," she said with her warm smile. "I don't think I've seen you before." "Welcome." David, keeping his role, nodded politely. "Thank you, ma'am. My name's David." "Just David. I've been working around town and thought I'd come here today." Rachel extended her hand without hesitation. "Well, you're always welcome here. I'm Rachel. And this is my son, Ethan." Ethan grinned up at him. "Hi, sir. You want to see my new Bible? I got it last week." David crouched down to his level, smiling. "I'd love to see it." Rachel was touched by how kindly this stranger spoke to her boy. She offered him a seat next to them the following Sunday, and soon David, the simple man, as people assumed, became part of their pew. Meanwhile, Sophia had no interest. She walked past him several times, never once offering a greeting. In her eyes, he was invisible, not worth her time. She saved her smiles for when the real David Miller walked in with his family. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Over the next few weeks, David deepened his test. He intentionally carried himself as though he was struggling. One evening, after choir rehearsal, he approached Sophia outside the church, carrying Daniel's beat-up truck keys in his hand. "Miss Sophia," he said humbly, "I enjoyed the singing tonight. You have a beautiful voice." Sophia looked him up and down, her smile polite but empty. "Thank you." "David, was it?" "Yes," he said. "I was wondering if it's not too much trouble. Would you like to grab some coffee sometime?" "My treat." Sophia's smile faltered. "Coffee? With him?" She thought about the way he dressed, the old truck he drove. Her pride couldn't allow it. "Oh, I'm very busy these days," she said quickly. "Between choir and work and everything else, I don't really have time for that." She flashed a smile that was more of a dismissal than kindness and walked away. David stood there quietly, watching her go. In his heart, he already knew the answer, but the test wasn't finished yet. Rachel, on the other hand, welcomed his friendship without hesitation. She invited him to sit with her and Ethan after church. She asked him questions about his life, and when he told her he was just working odd jobs, she never looked down on him. Instead, she said, "There's dignity in honest work. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less because of it." One Saturday afternoon, Rachel even invited him to their small home. The house was old and modest, with peeling paint and creaking floorboards, but it was filled with warmth. Ethan showed him his school drawings, proudly pointing to stick figures labeled "Me and Mama." Rachel offered him homemade cornbread and sweet tea, apologizing that it was nothing fancy. But to David it was everything. Sitting at their kitchen table, watching Rachel laugh softly as Ethan told a silly joke, David felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real unshakable peace. Yet he didn't reveal his identity. Not yet. He wanted to be absolutely sure. The final test came unexpectedly. One rainy evening, David deliberately asked Sophia for help. He approached her outside the church, umbrella dripping. "Sophia," he said, "my truck broke down near the gas station. Could you give me a ride?" She looked at him, horrified at the thought of mud and rain staining her car seats. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said quickly, "but I have somewhere to be. Maybe you can call a tow truck or something." She hurried off, leaving him standing in the rain. Later that same week, his old truck had another staged breakdown, this time near the street where Rachel lived. Without hesitation, Rachel and Ethan came out with towels and helped him push the truck into their driveway. Rachel offered him a warm meal and a place to dry off. "It's just spaghetti," she said apologetically, "but you're welcome to join us." David sat there, wet clothes drying by the fire, eating a simple meal with Rachel and Ethan, and he knew. He had found the answer. Sophia's pride had closed her heart. Rachel's humility had opened hers. And for David Miller, the test was complete. The days turned into weeks, and David's double life carried on quietly. To Rachel, he was simply David, the hard-working man with a kind smile who drove an old pickup truck and never complained. To the rest of the town, he was still the heir to the Miller fortune. But hidden in plain sight, David had discovered truths he could never have known otherwise. He spent more time with Rachel and Ethan, often stopping by after church or helping out when Rachel's father needed repairs around the house. He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, fixing a leaky roof, chopping firewood, tightening loose hinges. Rachel often told him, "You don't have to do all this," but he only smiled and said, "It's no trouble." For David, it wasn't trouble at all. Each moment in that small, humble home taught him what real life felt like. Simple meals cooked with love, laughter that didn't need money to be genuine, prayers whispered at night with gratitude for the little they had. It was the kind of life that made him feel more human than all the riches in his father's mansion ever had. Ethan adored him. The boy would run to him the moment he appeared, tugging his hand to show him a drawing, a school test, or his growing soccer skills. "David, watch this kick," he'd shout proudly, sending the ball flying across the yard. David always cheered like it was the winning goal at a World Cup. Rachel watched these moments with quiet admiration. She had been careful with her heart for so long, afraid of being hurt again, but she couldn't deny how different David was. He wasn't just kind, he was present. He didn't treat Ethan as a burden, but as a joy. More than once, Rachel caught herself whispering late at night, "Lord, who is this man you've brought into our lives?" But on the other side of town, Sophia Green was seething. She had noticed how often David sat near Rachel, how he laughed with her and her son. She had noticed how his eyes brightened when Rachel spoke, a brightness she herself had never managed to spark. Her pride couldn't bear it. To Sophia, it was unthinkable that she, the church's beloved singer, could be overlooked for someone like Rachel. One evening after choir rehearsal, she cornered Rachel in the church hallway. Her voice was sharp, her smile gone. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she hissed. Rachel blinked, startled. "Excuse me. Don't play innocent with me. I see the way you're chasing after David." Rachel frowned, shaking her head. "I'm not chasing anyone, Sophia. We're just friends." Sophia scoffed. "Friends? Don't insult me. You think someone like him would ever want someone like you? A single mom with nothing to offer. He's a Miller. You're just..." "Rachel." Rachel's chest tightened, but she refused to let Sophia see her hurt. Instead, she spoke softly. "Sophia, I don't compete with anyone. God's plan is God's plan. If David is meant for you, then so be it. But don't speak about me like that. I've done nothing to you." Sophia's face flushed with anger. She stormed off, her heels clicking hard against the floor. But her words stayed with Rachel long after she went home. That night, sitting by her window, Rachel whispered a prayer through her tears. Lord, if I'm being foolish, show me. If this is not your will, take it away before it breaks me. What Rachel didn't know was that David himself was reaching a turning point. The disguise had served its purpose. He had seen the difference between Sophia and Rachel, between pride and humility, between empty words and real kindness. But now he faced another question. How and when should he reveal the truth? One Saturday afternoon, as he and Daniel worked together again, David finally spoke his heart. I've seen enough, he said quietly. Rachel, she's the one. She didn't care about my clothes, my truck, or anything else. She welcomed me as I was. She even let me into her home, shared her table, trusted me with Ethan. I've never felt so sure about anything in my life. Daniel smiled. Then what are you waiting for? David exhaled slowly. The truth. I can't keep lying to her. But what if she feels betrayed? What if she thinks I tricked her? Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. If she truly loves you, she'll forgive you. If she doesn't, better to know now than later. That night, David prayed. He knelt by his bed, something he hadn't done in years, and whispered, Lord, give me the courage. Let her see my heart even when the truth is laid bare. The next Sunday after service, he decided to take a step closer to honesty. He offered Rachel and Ethan a ride. Not in Daniel's old truck this time, but in one of his family's modest cars. Rachel noticed the difference immediately, but she didn't question it. She simply thanked him as she always did. As he drove them home, Ethan chattered in the backseat about school and soccer, and Rachel laughed softly at his stories. David glanced at her, his heart pounding. He wanted to tell her right then, but the words stuck. Instead, he said, Rachel, can I ask you something? Of course, she replied. What do you think makes a good man? Rachel looked thoughtful. A good man. One who is honest, kind, and faithful. Not perfect, no one is perfect, but someone who tries. Someone who doesn't run when life gets hard. Her words pierced David's heart. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, knowing he would soon have to prove that he was exactly that kind of man. But Sophia wasn't finished either. The more she saw David with Rachel, the more desperate she became. She began spreading whispers in church, suggesting Rachel was using David, that she was a manipulator who wanted to climb out of poverty by latching onto him. Some people believed her. Others didn't. But Rachel heard the whispers, and though she kept serving faithfully as an usher, her heart grew heavier. One evening, as she walked home from choir practice with Ethan, she asked him, Ethan, do you think Mama is enough? Just as she is. Ethan, in his innocent wisdom, hugged her waist and said, Mama, you're the best person I know. You're more than enough. Tears filled her eyes. She kissed his head and whispered, Thank you, my boy. You always remind me what matters. Rachel didn't know that in the coming weeks, everything would change. David would reveal who he truly was. The truth would shake her, test her trust, and force her to decide whether love could survive even the deepest surprise. And for Sophia, the truth would bring not triumph, but the bitter taste of defeat. Because the mask was about to come off. The air in the small town of Willow Creek carried a kind of tension that only comes before a storm. Autumn had painted the trees with shades of gold and crimson, but beneath the beauty, something deeper was stirring. David Miller could no longer carry the secret he had lived under for months. The disguise, the borrowed clothes, the quiet slipping away from his wealthy life. It had all been worth it. But now the weight of silence pressed against him. He knew the truth had to come out. That Sunday, the church was filled as usual. The choir sang, the children recited their verses, and Reverend Brooks spoke about truth setting people free. David sat in the pew beside Rachel and Ethan, his chest pounding with every word of the sermon. He knew it was time. When the service ended, Sophia approached, her smile brittle, her voice dripping with sugar. David, I'm hosting a gathering tonight. Just a few friends. You'll come, won't you? David looked her in the eye. His voice calm but steady. No, Sophia. I won't. Her smile faltered. Why not? Because I need to be somewhere else. With someone who matters. His eyes flicked to Rachel. The rejection struck Sophia like a slap. She stood frozen, watching as David walked Rachel and Ethan out of the church. The whispers behind her grew louder. Some of the congregation had seen enough. They knew who David's heart was leaning toward. That evening, David asked Rachel if he could talk with her privately. Ethan had fallen asleep early, worn out from a day of running and laughter, so Rachel invited David onto the porch. The Mississippi night was quiet, only the crickets singing in the fields. Rachel folded her hands, her heart restless. "You've been carrying something, haven't you? I can feel it." David nodded slowly. His voice shook slightly. "Rachel, there's something you don't know about me. And I should have told you sooner." Rachel searched his face. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "My name isn't just David. It's David Miller. My family. We own the lumber company in town. The one your father works for. I'm not the simple man you've thought I was. I chose to live quietly, to come here as I am, because I wanted to know if people saw me or just my family's money." Rachel's breath caught. Her eyes widened, confusion rushing in. You're that David Miller." "Yes." His voice was firm, steady now. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was afraid you'd never look at me the same way again. But everything I've said to you, every laugh, every prayer, every moment with Ethan, those were real. You mean more to me than anything else in this world." Rachel rose from her seat, stepping away, her heart torn in two. Part of her felt betrayed. He had hidden his true identity, and that deception cut deep. But another part of her remembered every act of kindness, every moment of honesty that had flowed from his heart. The man she knew, the man Ethan adored, was the same man standing before her now. Tears stung her eyes. "Why didn't you trust me with the truth?" David's voice broke. "Because I needed to trust you first. I needed to see if someone could love me without the name, without the wealth, without the mask. And you did, Rachel. You did." Silence hung between them, heavy as the night sky. Just then, Sophia appeared at the edge of the yard. She had followed them, her rage simmering. She stepped forward, her voice shrill. "So it's true. You've been pretending all along, David. And you chose her. After everything I've given to this church, after all my devotion, you throw me aside for a single mother who has nothing." Rachel froze, stunned by Sophia's intrusion. David turned sharply, his eyes blazing with a strength Sophia had never seen. "Sophia, stop. This isn't about you, and it never was. Your pride and bitterness blinded you. Rachel has shown me more love, faith, and humility than you ever have. You wanted attention. She gave me acceptance. That's the difference." Sophia's face twisted with fury. For a moment, she looked ready to spit more venom, but the truth in his words silenced her. She turned on her heel and stormed off into the night, her heels crunching against the gravel. When she was gone, the yard grew quiet again. Rachel wrapped her arms around herself, still trembling. David stepped closer, his voice soft but steady. "Rachel, I don't want to live another day without being honest with you. Love you. I love Ethan. I love the life I've seen with you. Please, don't let my mistake take that away." Rachel's tears spilled freely now. She turned to face him fully, her heart aching with both pain and love. Slowly, she whispered, "Do you know what scared me the most? Not that you're rich. Not that you lied. What scared me was the thought of losing the man who knelt on this porch to play with my boy, the man who prayed with me when no one else would. That's the man I fell for. And if he's still standing here, then maybe I can forgive the rest." David's chest lifted with hope. He reached for her hand, and after a long pause, she let him take it. The next weeks unfolded like a healing rain after a storm. The truth spread quickly through Willow Creek, and though some whispered about Rachel catching a wealthy man, most saw the truth for what it was. Two hearts brought together by faith and honesty. Sophia, shamed by her own actions, slowly drifted from the center of church life. Her voice in the choir no longer carried the same power, because bitterness had stolen the purity of her song. But Rachel and David grew closer. Their bond deepened not by wealth or status, but by trust hard-won. Ethan began calling David Dad without hesitation, and the first time it happened, David nearly wept with joy. Months later, on a crisp spring morning, the church bells of Willow Creek rang with a new sound of celebration. David and Rachel stood hand in hand at the altar, Ethan by their side. The congregation, once divided by whispers, now filled with warmth and love, watched as Reverend Brooks spoke the words that sealed their union. Rachel's eyes shimmered with tears as she whispered her vows, and David's voice broke when he promised to stand by her for the rest of his days. When they kissed, the church erupted in joy. Ethan clapped louder than anyone, shouting, "That's my mom and dad!" And so, in a small Mississippi town, under the gaze of God and the witness of family, friends, and even those who once doubted Rachel and David's story found its ending. But it wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. A beginning of a life built not on money, not on pride, but on the simple, unshakable truth that love is strongest when it is real, when it is tested, and when it is chosen freely. For David, the mask had finally come off. For Rachel, the fear of not being enough had been silenced. And for Ethan, the boy who once prayed for a father, his prayer had been answered in the most unexpected way. As the sun set that evening, Rachel looked at her husband and her son and whispered softly, "Thank you, Lord. You write the best stories."